Okay, guys, here's what we're doing. Unit circle. So we covered it last time. There's really nothing new. We're just spending more time with it because you need to get more comfortable. So today and Thursday, when I see you guys, we're just going to be spending time with the unit circle. And then we review on Friday and we quiz on Monday. Okay? Or excuse me, Tuesday. Tuesday for you guys. Okay? So where we are. So we used a little bit of the unit circle yesterday, but the thing with the unit circle yesterday, I gave you all the data. You're going to have to fill this in. So what it looks like on your quiz, when you take the quiz next week, this is question number 1. Fill in this information. So you'll need to fill in this information and then use this information for the entirety of the quiz. So let's go back to looking at the unit circle. And let's figure out how we know what these points are. So the unit circle is a circle with radius what? Radius is 1. So this point right here is 1, 0. Okay. What is this point up here? 0, 1. If the circle went all the way back around, over here it's going to come to -1, 0. And then down here it's going to be at 0, -1. So I apologize for that being a quarter circle, not a whole circle, but you get the point of what it would look like. So 0, 1 would be down here. Now, we just need ways of memorizing what these numbers are. So in this case, it's going to be what? Square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. Square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 2 over 2. And then 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. If you know all of those numbers, you'll be good with the unit circle. The other thing you need to know the positive, negative signs of all the trig functions. And how do we know that the other day? We had a sentence. Yeah, so you had all students take calculus, or create your own sentence if you don't like this one. That means when you look at the quadrants and you look at all the functions, they are all positive in the first quadrant. Students, only the sign is positive in the second quadrant. Take, only the tangent in the third. And then calculus, so only the cosine in the fourth. Okay, so that tells you plus or minus. So rather than write these numbers down in every quadrant, just memorize them in the first quadrant and know where the positives and negatives apply. Okay, so yes, and I think it will be later on. We'll get to it right here. Okay, so it's later on in your book. Now, let's talk about how we memorize the unit circle. I think it's pretty easy to know at 0 degrees, that's the point 1, 0. Okay, you agree on that? If this is the distance 1, it should be easy to memorize that's 1, 0. Okay, at the top at 90 degrees, I think it's pretty easy to know that's 0, 1. At 180 is what? -1, 0, and 270, 0, -1. Those are pretty easy, okay? We just need to figure out how do we remember what happens at 30, 45, and 60. So all of you have a left hand. So you can take your left hand just like you see right there, okay? So the ring finger right here at 30 degrees, okay? So if you can pull that finger down like this, okay? 30 degrees. How many fingers are to the left? 3. How many fingers are to the right? 1. So at 30 degrees, I'm going to write square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. Because at 30 degrees, there were 3 fingers over here to the left, 1 finger to the right. That's how I remembered that, okay? Now I'm going to go to 45 degrees. So I'm going to move to my next finger. So that is the middle finger, okay? It's useful for other things other than what you think. So the middle finger, how many fingers are to the left? 2. How many to the right? 2. I'm going to write square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Okay? How do you know which finger goes to which degree? Well, It sort of matches like this, okay? 0, 30, 45, 60, and 90, okay? So I figure I don't really worry with the 0 one, okay? I figure, you don't need, you can remember that one. But what it is, it's the square root of that number over 2. So at 0, how many fingers is that? What's the square root of 4? 2. What's 2 over 2? 2 over 2 is 1. That's a lot of work to go through to write down 1, 0. I think at 0 you can remember 1, 0 is on the unit circle, okay? I just look at the 30, the 45, and 60 are the ones I'm trying to remember. So when I at the 30, that's square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. So, see what I'm saying? Now when I get to 45, I got 2 fingers on the left, 2 fingers on the right. So I've got square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Now I'm going to go to 60. So I'm holding down my index finger. How many fingers to the left? Come on. 1. How many fingers to the right? 3. So that's why I'm going to write 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. And I'm done. That's all I need, okay? So if you've got fingers and you can count, you're good with this, okay? This just goes into a lot of details about what I just did here, okay? But these numbers, if you have trouble remembering them, this is just an easy way to remember how to label the unit circle, okay? So you got to figure out a way to get that, and then you have to figure out the positive and negative signs. So all students take calculus. All the trig functions are positive in quadrant 1. Only the sine is positive in quadrant 2. Only the tangent in quadrant 3, and only the cosine in quadrant 4. So if you can do all of that, you'll get to where you've got a unit circle that's filled out, and you've got information like this. So to fill this out, all the functions are positive in quadrant 1. What's the only function positive in quadrant 2? Sine. So the others are negative. What's quadrant 3? Tangent. Quadrant 4, cosine. Okay, that's all the positive and negative signs. On the unit circle, what is it 0 degrees? 1, 0. Okay. At 30 degrees, I'm going to pull down this finger. What's to the left? How many are to the left of that finger? 3. So I'm going to write square root of 3 over 2. And then how many are to the right? 1. Okay. When I get to 45 degrees, I'm going to hold down that middle finger, and I've got square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 2 over 2. When I get to 60 degrees, hold down that index finger. I've got 1/2 and the square root of 3 over 2. So the number of fingers is helpful for you to remember those numbers, okay? At 90 degrees, what is this number up here? It's 0, 1. And then I don't have it, but at 180 over here is negative 1, 0. And at 270 down here is 0, negative 1, okay? If you know all of those things and you can fill that in, now you're good to go with the unit circle, okay? What I would do, I will print out some extra copies so you have that, you can practice. But if you'll look ahead to the review, this is what it's going to look like on your test. You need to be able to fill that in. And I think it occurs in your homework, doesn't it? Yeah, like in your homework, you start seeing this repetitively. Fill this in, for you to have practice, okay? So let's go for it now. So here I've got this unit circle. I'm going to use one here. So remember, all these functions are positive over here. Okay, let me use the one that's on your board so I don't have to keep scrolling. So let's evaluate these trig functions. Tangent of 225 degrees, first step is to do what? Draw the angle, okay? 225 degrees. If that's 0, 180, where's 225 going to take me? Which quadrant? Third quadrant, right? So I come over here. So if that's 225 degrees, what is the central angle? Yeah, that's a 45-degree angle. So that's a 45-degree angle, and in which quadrant does it lie? Quadrant 3. Okay. Now, on the unit circle, what's the definition of tangent? No, the definition of sine is what coordinate? Sine is y, cosine is x, tangent is y over x. So at 45 degrees, what is y divided by x? It's 1. Square root of 2 over 2 divided by square root of 2 over 2. So this is going to be 1. In the third quadrant, what goes in front of a tangent? A positive or a negative sign? Positive. We're done. The answer is 1. The tangent of 225 is 1. Okay? So we're going to do this process repetitively. You have to draw the angle, find its reference angle or its central angle, use the unit circle. Okay? Sine of 315. First thing to do is to figure out what with this angle. Draw it to figure out what quadrant it is and what the central angle is. So 315 starts here, goes all the way here, but it doesn't make it to 360. Okay? So if that's 315, what is the angle that's between there and 360? Yeah, that's a 45 degree angle. So I need to consider a 45 degree angle in which quadrant? Quadrant 4. The sine. On the unit circle, sine corresponds to what coordinate? Y. What's the y coordinate of 45 degrees? Square root of 2 over 2. Okay. Yes?
So it's always going to be one, like our answer is one of those numbers.
Yep, it's always going to be one of these. The y coordinate of 45 degrees is square root of 2 over 2. Now, if you're talking about the sine function and you're in the fourth quadrant, what goes in front of a sine function in the fourth quadrant? Positive or negative? Negative. So this is negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay? So we're doing the same procedure and over to draw the angle, find out what quadrant it is in, and the reference angle is either going to be a 30, a 45, a 60, or you're going to be on one of the quadrants, 90, 180, 270. Okay? Cosine of 240. I need to figure out where is that angle. What quadrant does that angle lie in? Yeah, so you come down here. That's 240 because we know it's between 180 and 270. Okay? The biggest thing I need to know is what is that angle? How much further after 180 did I have to go to get to 240? I'm at 180. How much further to get me to 240? Am I hearing 60? Okay. 60 degrees in what quadrant? Okay, so cosine. The cosine is what coordinate? X. So go to 60. What's the coordinate of x? 1/2. So my answer is 1/2. And then what's the final thing I do? Yeah, look and see. In the third quadrant, the cosine is negative. Okay, so this answer is negative 1/2. So again, we talked about it. The sine is the y coordinate. Cosine is the x coordinate. Tangent is y over x. Okay. We mentioned it yesterday, but now we're going to start to see problems that deal with reciprocal functions. The cosecant is 1 over y because it's the reciprocal of sine. The secant is 1 over x because it's the reciprocal of cosine. The cotangent is just x over y. Okay? So now most of what we've been doing so far has been sine, cosine, tangent. Now we're going to mix it up a little bit and deal with the reciprocal functions. The cosecant of 330. Okay, so the first step is still find the angle. So the angle 330 is going to be right here. Okay, so if that's 330, what is this central angle right here? It's 30 degrees because 330 plus 30 is 360. So a 30 degree angle, and which quadrant? Quadrant 4. Okay. Now I've got a couple of choices. I can find the sine and then take its reciprocal, okay, because that's what this reciprocal is. Or I can just say, okay, I'm looking for cosecant. That's the reciprocal of sine. So I'm not looking for y, I'm looking for what? What's the reciprocal of y? No, 1 over y, okay? So you got choices here. So I can just say if the sine of theta is y, the cosecant of theta is going to be 1 over y, okay? So go to 30 degrees. What's the y coordinate at 30 degrees? What's the y coordinate at 30 degrees? 1/2, right? 1/2. So this answer is going to be 1 over 1/2. And then I'm in the fourth quadrant. What's the value of sine in the fourth quadrant? It's a negative number. So what is 1 divided by 1/2? Whoa. This is, when you divide by 1/2, that's the same as multiplying by 2, right? Come on, guys. Dividing by fractions, multiplying by its reciprocal. This number is -2, okay? Okay, it gets a little bit more involved with the reciprocal functions. It's just adding another layer to it, but the same process. Draw the angle. Find out which quadrant you're in. You're going to have a reference angle that's something here on the unit circle. Find the value, attach the positive, negative sign that goes with it. The secant of 150. Okay, so let's draw 150. So where does 150 end up? Yeah, let's call it the second quadrant. So if that's 150 degrees, what is the central angle that is right there? It's 30, okay? So for all intents and purposes, I'm talking about a 30-degree angle in which quadrant? Quadrant 2, okay? Now what's the definition of cosine? Cosine is x. Therefore, secant will be what? 1 over x, okay? So I need to find 1 over x. So go to 30 degrees. What's the x coordinate at 30 degrees? Square root of 3 over 2. So I need to figure out what is 1 over square root of 3 over 2. In the second quadrant, what value will the cosine? Now the cosine is going to have the same thing as secant. I mean, they're just reciprocal. So cosine, secant, what value goes in front of it? Negative, okay? So what's negative 1 over square root of 3 over 2? 2 over square root of 3. So this is, I'm counting on the fact that, you know, that like 1 divided by a over b is the same as 1 times b over a, which is b over a. So 1 over a fraction is just the reciprocal of that, okay? Okay, is this harder? Is this easier? Is this about the same? Is this, okay. What's harder, the reciprocal part? Okay, well, since you're taking notes, Sultan, what, okay. Maybe if you would take notes when you got home later and did the homework, this is all on the recording here, so. Okay. Cotangent of -210. What is the first step in all of these guys? Draw the angle. -210. That's 0. -90. -180. So -210 takes me all the way over to here. And so if that's -210, I need to figure out what is the angle right there. What is that angle? -30 degrees, okay? Because I went -180, I had to go 30 more degrees to get to -210. So I'm talking about a 30-degree angle in which quadrant? Quadrant 2, okay? What was the definition of tangent? Y over x. That means the definition of cotangent is what? X over y, okay? So go to 30 degrees And let's figure out what's x over y. X over y is going to be what? Square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. So this is square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. Tangent, cotangent. What will the value be in the second quadrant? It will be negative. So this is a negative value. What? So, okay. So, when you've got fraction over fraction, this is negative square root of 3 over 2. Instead of dividing by 1/2, or dividing by 1 over 2, that's the same as multiplying by what? 2 over 1. Okay? So, 2 and 2. So this is just negative square root of 3. Okay? Is the answer. So again, what we're doing different today is we're doing the reciprocal functions. Everything we did yesterday was sine, cosine, tangent. Now we just added reciprocal functions to the mix. Okay. Now the other kind of problem that we did yesterday was where I gave you the answer and you had to give me back the angle. Okay, this was in your homework. Did you like this kind of problem, or is this hard? Okay. Pardon me? You guys already know how to do the rest of them, or?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, can we just do like half on each?
We can do part of those. We'll see where we go. We need to get to these problems. You haven't done anything like these, so.
Can we do like 3 of these? And then, yeah.
Okay. So, tell me what to do then. Okay. So let's do cosecant equal -2, the second one there. So, cosecant equal -2. What do I do with this? So cosecant goes with sine. So if the sine, what's the value? Sine is what? Sine is y. Cosecant is 1 over y. Okay? Do you see anywhere on the unit circle that 1 over y would be equal to 2? 1 over the y value equals 2. Is there any of these numbers, when you take 1 over that number, you get a 2 on the y values? Right here. 1 over 1/2 is 2, right? So that tells me this is talking about a 30-degree angle. Okay. Now, cosecant and sine, what's in front of that 2? A negative. Where would I expect to get negative values out of sine and cosecant? Third and fourth. Okay. So this is a 30-degree angle in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. Because sine is negative in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. Okay? So, what's the final answer here? What is the answer? You guys are wanting to fast track and move through them. What is this? 1/2 was where we started. So, now what angles make this true? Huh? No, well, that helps us draw the unit circle. What are 30-degree angles in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4? I'm not getting the warm fuzzies here. 210's correct. What's the other one? 330. So the way I did that, guys, I need a 30-degree angle in quadrant 3, quadrant 4. So if that's a 30-degree angle in quadrant 3, what's the angle from there to there? It's 180 plus 30, which is 210. If I need a 30-degree angle in quadrant 4, what's the angle all the way measured around is what? 330. Okay. Those are the two answers here. Okay. Pardon me? It's fine to draw it out every time, okay? So you're good with that. That's just a way of checking your work. So I know you guys didn't want to work these, but I'm not feeling that we got this down. Cotangent is -1. What's the definition of cotangent? X over y, okay? So x over y. Do you see any place that I look on the unit circle, when I take the x value and divide it by the y value, I get a 1? Yeah, at 45, x over y is 1. Everyone see that? So this is talking about a 45-degree angle. Now it's got a negative in front of it. Tangent and cotangent, where are those things negative? 2 and 4. So the answer to this problem is a 45-degree angle in quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. Okay, so how do we figure those out? In quadrant 2, so what would that full angle be measured from 0? What's the math, the arithmetic that needs to happen? It's 180 minus 45. Okay. For quadrant 4, I need to figure out what is 360, what? Minus 45. What is that? 315. These numbers start to repeat. You start getting the same answers, okay? This one needs to change. That's not possible. Let's change it to cosine. Okay, cosine, negative root, oh, excuse me. Oh, it is possible. I see what I did. Sorry about that. Back up. Let's do this one. Okay, secant is the reciprocal of what? Cosine, right? Okay, what's the value? What's the definition of cosine? It's x. So what's secant? Okay, do you see 1 over x being 2 over the square root of 2? Where would that be? Where would my where would 1 over my x be 2 over root 2? At 45 degrees, right? Because 1 over this is just going to flip it, right? So this is a 45-degree angle. Secant, cosine, I've got a negative in front. Where are those trig functions negative? 2 and 3. So 45 degrees in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. So what are those angles? What's a 45-degree angle in quadrant 2? That's 135. What's the 45-degree angle in quadrant 3? Noah? 225. Okay. Okay. Is someone got their notifications on there? This one's impossible. Let's do the last one, and then we'll go to the next kind. Tangent is negative square root of 3. Okay. What's the definition of tangent? How about y over x? Okay. So the tangent is y over x. Do you see any place that I could take y and divide it by x and get square root of 3? Y over x is the square root of 3. So if I did y over x, this will be 1/2 divided by square root of 3 over 2. So at, what is, yeah, so 1/2 divided by square root of 3 over 2. That's 1/2 times 2 over square root of 3. That's 1 over square root of 3. So it's not 30, it is at 60. So when you take this and divide it by this, you get square root of 3. So this happens at 60 degrees. What kind of sign is in front of that number, positive or negative? Negative. Where would the tangent be negative? 2 and 4. So what does a 60-degree angle look like in quadrant 2 and quadrant 4? Okay. So in quadrant 2, you've got this angle, and in quadrant 4, you've got this angle. So what is it? 120, and what's the other one? 300. Okay. Okay. Now, this kind of problem we haven't seen before. So what's different about this one? Yeah, but before I had like cosine of theta equals square root of 2 over 2. I don't have cosine of theta equals square root of 2 over 2. I've got cosine of theta equal what? Tangent of 180. So you think, what do I need to figure out in order to get this problem moving? Well, ultimately, I want to figure out what theta is. Is there one side of that equation that I could evaluate? Yeah, tan 180. What is the tangent of 180? So the tangent of 180, what's the definition of tangent? Y over x. If you go to 180, what's the y coordinate? What's the y coordinate? 0. What's the x coordinate? -1. So this is 0 over -1. What is 0 over -1? Not on Tuesdays. It's what? 0 divided by -1 is 0. That took more thought than I thought. So this problem turns into cosine of theta equals 0. That's what I'm after. Now it turns into a problem just like the one we did, okay? So all I did was just go further upstream in this problem. Now, the cosine of theta equals 0. What's the definition of cosine? X. Do you see an x coordinate at 0? Does it happen both places? Yeah, so I've got an x coordinate of 0 at 90 and 270. So that tells me that this happens at 90 degrees and 270. So this turns into, where is the x equal to 0 on the unit circle? X was equal to 0 at 90 degrees and 270 degrees. Tangent of 225 equal the sine of theta. One side of that equation has no variables. Which side has no variables? Let's go with the left side. The right side has a variable, sine of theta. The left side has no variables. It's tangent of 225. That's a number. How do we find out that number? Yeah, so the tangent of 225, so 225 is right here. What is the central angle there? That's a 45-degree angle. Okay, so this boils down to, what's the definition of tangent? Y over x. So I need to figure out what is y over x at 45 degrees in which quadrant? Quadrant 3. Okay. For 45 degrees, what's y over x? It's 1. Okay. So that's 1. What's the value of tangent in the third quadrant? It's positive. Okay. So this problem becomes sine of theta equal 1. Okay. So what's the definition of sine? Y. So this is asking you, where is y equal to 1? Where on the unit circle do I see y equal to 1? 90 degrees. Yeah. Is there any other spot that happens? Yeah, that's the only spot where y is equal to 1. Okay, so 90 degrees is the only answer to that one. Okay, couple more and we're done. Cosine of 135 equal the sine of theta. What's the first thing I have to figure out? What's the cosine of 135? In order to do that, I need to draw the angle and figure out where that angle is. Where's the angle 135? Yeah. Second quadrant. But what's the central angle that you see there? It's a 45-degree angle. So I need to figure out what is the cosine of 45 degrees in quadrant 2. Okay. So cosine is what coordinate? X. At 45 degrees, what's the value of x? Square root of 2 over 2. In quadrant 2, what's the cosine? Negative. So this becomes sine theta equal negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay. Now, the sine is what coordinate? Y. So where is y equal to square root of 2 over 2? Y equals square root of 2 over 2 on where? 45 degrees. Okay. So 45 degrees. And what's in front of that square root of 2 over 2? Negative. Where is sine negative? Yeah, third and fourth. So this is in quadrant 3, quadrant 4. So what are the angles? What's a third degree? What's a 45-degree angle in third quadrant? 135, second quadrant. 225. And what's the other one? 315. Okay. So a lot of steps. I mean, here's the thing. We had to put together a lot of things. Figure out the cosine of 135. You had to use a unit circle. Once you got that value, now the sine of theta equals that answer. You had to go back and use a unit circle. And then you had to come up with answers in both quadrants. So we're putting together probably all the skills we've done so far in this unit. The cosecant of 210 equal the secant of theta. So we have to figure out the cosecant of 210. What's the first step in finding out the cosecant of 210? We won't have a calculator for this. You're just adding the angles. Okay, they're fine. What's the first step to figure out cosecant of 210? Well, figure out where 210 is, okay? You may already know that. So if that's 210, what is the central angle there? 30 degrees, okay? So I've got to figure out the cosecant of 30 degrees in quadrant 3, okay? So the cosecant, what's the definition of sine? Y. If sine is y, cosecant is 1 over y. So I've got to figure out 1 over y. That's what's going to give me the cosecant. So go to 30 degrees. What's the y coordinate? 1/2. What's 1 over 1/2? 2. Okay, so this answer is 2. And if I'm in the third quadrant, what's the value of sine cosecant? Negative. So this answer is negative 2. So this is the secant of theta equal negative 2. So all I did was the cosecant of 210 is negative 2. Now I've got a problem that says go figure out if the secant of theta is negative 2. What's the definition of secant? No. Secant is a reciprocal of cosine. What's the definition of cosine? If cosine is x, secant is 1 over x. So I'm going to ask myself, where does 1 over x equal negative 2. So where can I go to find 1 over the x value being 2? Look at the x's. Is there one of those numbers that if I take 1 over that number, I get 2? It's right here at 60, okay? So this is a 60 degree, okay? But secant, cosine, where are they negative? Quadrant 2 and 3. So this is in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. So what's the 60 degree angle in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3? Well, quadrant 2, what's the one in quadrant 2? What's the 60 degree angle in quadrant 2? 120. In quadrant 3? What's the arithmetic that has to happen? No. 180 plus 60, 240. Okay. Okay.